Tonight on the Your Life Matters Show podcast.
I really think that it's, we need to focus on the bullying, or we need, like that. That's the thing, is violence is never the solution. I mean, in my opinion, violence is never the solution. There's always way more bad that comes out of it than good. I think the only thing that would solve the violence in the world is love. I mean, that's really what it would take. If the solution to all of our problems is if every person simply practiced the golden rule all the time, the world would look completely different than what it does.
Behind every struggle, there's a story, and every story deserves to be heard. This is the Your Life Matters Show podcast. Your hosts are Steve Hodgson and licensed psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis.
What do you do when life refuses to go easy on you? When you're told you don't belong? When the world around you feels like it's working against you? When the voices of doubt become louder than your own? And then life delivers something even heavier. There is loss. There is grief. It's the kind of pain that changes you forever. Sadly, for many people, that's where the story ends. But for others, that's where something new begins. Because buried within struggle is a choice. Stand still or push forward. Even when it hurts. Even when it's hard. Even when no one else believes you can. Tonight, we sit down with a woman who chose to push forward. Kendra Rae Mahon. Known as Kung Fu Kendra, a martial artist, a third-generation master in the Wing Chun tradition, a system built not on brute strength, but on precision, discipline, and using adversity as an advantage. In a world that tried to push her out, she learned how to stay centered. In moments that could have broken her, she learned how to adapt. And through loss, through bullying, through adversity, she found a way to keep moving forward. Not just in martial arts, but in life. This isn't just a story about Kung Fu, it's about resilience, mental strength, and learning how to push your way through. Here are your hosts.
Well, howdy, and welcome to the Your Life Matters Show podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hodgson, and I'm here with the man who somehow makes sense of the chaos in my brain every single week, licensed psychotherapist, Dr. Eric L. Davis. Dr. Davis.
It's a challenge.
A big challenge. And you only seen part of it. But, that's interesting because Dr. Davis and I have been discussing doing a show on who your hosts are.
Yeah.
Where he'll take control and he'll interview me. He'll do the intro, outro, and the questions, and vice versa. This way maybe you get to learn a little more something about, your host that you have here. So, luckily tonight we have a really, really good guest. Kendra is, she's phenomenal. I mean, she really, really is. And we had a really good interview with her. But before we launch headfirst into the episode, I truly ask that you take a moment, really listen closely, and learn more about our sponsor, Waypost Counseling. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did.
Do you sometimes go through life and begin to think maybe something in your life feels off? Not broken, not falling apart, just heavier than it used to be. Stress, anxiety, thoughts that don't quiet down. Or maybe it's your relationship, conversations turning into arguments, distance growing where connection used to be, and you're not sure how to get back. Or maybe it's something more private, like gambling, something that started small, but now it's affecting your finances, your relationships, your peace of mind. And you keep telling yourself, I'll figure it out, but it hasn't gotten easier. The truth is, you don't have to do this alone. At Waypost Counseling, help is available for individuals, for couples, and for those struggling with addiction. and you don't even have to leave your home. If you're watching this right now, here's your reason to ask for help. We offer secure online sessions. You can talk to someone from a place that feels safe and private. No pressure, no judgment, just a conversation that could change everything. If something in you is saying, "Are they talking about me?" Maybe it's time. It's time to listen to that voice inside that is begging you to relieve the stress and anxiety and make the call. Waypost Counseling. Dial 317-762-0904 or dial 317-659-0179. Also, you can visit them on the web at waypostcounseling.com for more information, because we do not need to tell you your life does matters. And taking that first step could make all the difference. Remember that reaching out for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength to begin to get the best of your life back again. Please, for you and your loved ones, make the call now.
Okay, so this week's episode is powerful. We're talking about resilience, discipline, and what it really takes to push through adversity.
Yeah, every day I try. Some weeks are harder than others.
This might be one of those weeks, too, because today's topic hits on something we all face at some point, which is adversity. Not the kind you read about, the kind you feel, the kind that tests you, that really pushes you, and sometimes makes you question everything.
Yeah. The interesting thing is it's not the adversity that really defines us. It's how we respond to adversity.
And that's what makes today's guest so very powerful. We're joined by Kendra Rae Mahon. Okay, she's also known on the internet and every place as Kung Fu Kendra.
Mm-hmm.
She's a martial artist, entrepreneur, and author of the book Push Your Way Through. But more importantly, she's someone who has lived what we're talking about today.
And what I find really compelling about her story is the framework she uses, drawing from the principles of Wing Chun. This isn't about brute force. It's about efficiency, control, and adapting under pressure.
Really, when you think about it, it sounds a lot like what we all need in life, because, come on, let's be honest. Life doesn't always come in a straight line. It throws punches, it shifts, it swerves all over the place. And sometimes it's really, really hard.
Yeah. And without the right tools, people can feel really overwhelmed, stuck, or even defeated.
Now, Kendra's story includes bullying, navigating a male-dominated space, and dealing with the loss of her mother recently. And, as we said, you're really sorry for that. And instead of staying down, she found a way to push forward.
Yeah, and that's the key word, push. Not ignore, not avoid, but push through it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us try to just ignore what's happening around us, and we're just not dealing with the issue. But you just have to, at one time, like they say, pull your panties up and push right through it, And that's what we're going to dive into today. How do you actually do that? Okay, what do you do to keep you going when everything else wants you to stop? And what can we learn from ancient disciplines that still apply to our modern struggles we're having today?
Because those answers can be life-changing for someone watching right now.
See, today we're going to delve into how the same principles can help anyone facing struggles in their lives. Now, Dr. Davis, I do have just a couple of questions before we start. And we do this because it helps set up today's interview before we even talk to Kendra. So that's going to help a little bit. What does mental resilience actually mean from a clinical perspective?
So from a clinical perspective, it really just means the person's ability to adapt, recover from, continue functioning in the face of stress, adversity, conflict, trauma, etc. So it really is, our body's way of coping with adverse things. And that's really what resilience is.
But I've always wondered, why do some people break under adversity while others just grow from it?
I think because, for some individuals, that adversity is the push that they need, to truly become willing to do something about whatever the problem is. Whereas others, that's they're just not ready to change it, I think.
You know, it's
Or
funny.
they're trying to and can't, you know.
Right, exactly. Because, and I think a lot of times they don't know how
Yeah.
also. So that leads right into the next question I was going to ask. Yeah, and I think I even asked Kendra this question during the interview too, but how does discipline, like let's say like the martial arts training and all the disciplines she's learned in that impact our mental health?
So it has a powerful regulatory effect on our mental health, and that is accomplished through, Kung Fu provides consistency and structure. It provides embodied regulation, impulse control. It's, it gives you a task with specific things to focus on, and a routine.
I mean, isn't that really part of when we think about it, isn't that what you do in when you meet with a patient?
Hmm.
Okay, and start to work on a plan. You give them steps that they can take for themselves
Yeah.
to go. And yeah, that is really that discipline
Hmm.
they really need to set, especially someone, let's say it's an alcoholic or a drug addict that has some kind of addiction. Let's just put it that way. It could be
Hmm.
so many different things, gambling, that they need to follow a certain steps when they feel that's going
Yeah.
to happen. Yeah. And I mean, and the great thing, like even Kendra said, you can relate that so much to everything that takes place in life.
Yeah.
You just need to see it from a very disciplined eyes. Okay, that's probably the best way of putting it. See
Yeah.
discipline. And if anybody's wondering, it's his green screen behind him because all of a sudden your clock came behind your eyes to your ear
Oh,
there. Okay,
oh, really?
yeah, just
That's
just
wild.
just so somebody was watching and said, "What the heck was that?" Okay,
Sorry.
okay, he's being watched by aliens or something. Okay, so let me ask you, grief. Sadly, we all have grief in our lives. How does that play in shaping identity and even our emotional strength?
So it depends on how it's processed, but when grief is processed in a healthy way, it leads to greater emotional depth and empathy, like a better understanding of what others go through, a clearer sense of values or priorities, um, and even increased mental flexibility, to come to terms with things. So, but unprocessed grief, I mean, that can lead to avoidance, depression, emotional constriction, and that, um, a lot of times in therapy, we will work on a lot of unprocessed grief.
It's strange because everybody handles grief differently.
Hmm.
I know myself, I feel sad, okay, with lack of a better word, okay, when someone passes away,
Yeah.
and it's going to hit me really hard at the moment. But then I don't know if I said this before in the show. There was a line somewhere in the movie that said, "I can't repeat an emotion," and
Yeah.
it really, really hit me hard because that's true of me. I know even when a few years back when my mom passed, yeah, I was
Yeah.
saddened by it. Dealing with it right at the moment. And maybe a little afterwards, but very little afterwards. At the the viewing and stuff and the funeral, people are like, well, how are you like normal?
Mhm.
Not really joking with people, but because it's inappropriate.
Yeah.
But being relaxed. It's like because I can't repeat that emotion.
Yeah. It's an example I use with clients a lot of times about grief is I'll tell them, like think back to when you've been to a funeral, and think of all the different family members, and a lot of them were probably, maybe one was sitting in the corner telling jokes, laughing with everybody, and and at first glance, like I can't, this is no laughing, and it's like no, that's how that person's processing their grief. There's no right or wrong way.
Hmm. And I mean, and it's it's actually funny because you don't realize how much that little laugh will actually help
Oh
alleviate
yeah,
a lot of people's stress and stuff during. I have so many stories I could talk about that, and I wasn't even involved in half of them. Okay, so you know, I asked this to Kendra today, but structured systems,
hmm,
similar to like the Kung Fu philosophy. you know, they can help people control themselves in very chaotic moments. Why is that?
It's because it creates a psychological, basically like a structure, where a person's aware of, basically structure provides predictable frameworks, you know, clear values and principles, and repetition. So when someone um, implements a new structure in their life, once we get used to that, that really provides a lot of security because we within reason know what to expect.
Well, I got one more question I want to ask a little bit. How important, I should say, is confidence when overcoming bullying or feeling less than, you should be in that situation?
It's crucial, because the thing is, uh, we have every right to stand up for ourselves, and if people are being negative and so forth, the reality is it doesn't mean they're right. I mean, and my heart just breaks for anybody dealing with bullying. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Um, today.
Well, it's interesting because I've noticed a lot of times when I'm going through um, Instagram or even some of the shorts on YouTube and stuff. And, they'll show somebody, a kid being bullied, bullied,
Mhm.
bullied. And finally, the way they're dealing with it is fighting back physically.
Right.
I think we're pushing a little more of violence as a
Yeah.
solution to bullying
Mhm.
instead of proper education to
Right.
the bully itself.
Yeah.
We're educating the bully by, knocking them out or knocking their
Mhm.
teeth out or something. And that's just violence with violence instead of
Yeah.
actually dealing with the issue itself that's at hand. I mean, why are we at that point? And recently, I'm going to give away a little bit where when we're recording here, but, we had the guy that, tried at the correspondence dinner, tried to break in to kill the president.
Yeah.
And, the world is spewing more and more violence.
Mhm.
Okay. I keep thinking back to my dad saying, we should be more worried about a civil war than us fighting wars in another country because, yeah, we're almost at that point, where everybody's talking violence. And I know it really doesn't have to do with the show. What do we need to do to turn that down?
I really think that it's, we need to focus on the bullying, or we need, like
Mhm.
that. That's the thing is violence is never the solution. I mean, in my opinion, violence is never the solution. There's always way more bad that comes out of it than good. I think the only thing that would solve the violence in the world is love. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really what it would take. If the solution to all of our problems is if every person simply practiced the golden rule all
Yep.
the time, the world would look completely different than what it does.
Yeah, let me quote John Lennon. All you need is love.
Yeah.
That's the answer to that. Well, today we're honored to welcome Kendra Rae Mahon, known to many people as Kung Fu Kendra. Okay, as we said earlier, she's a third generation master in Wing Chun lineage. She's an entrepreneur. She's an author of a great book called Push Your Way Through. Now, Kendra has taken the ancient principles of Kung Fu and applied them to modern life, helping people build confidence, resilience, and mental strength. So, here's our interview that we had with Kendra. So, Kendra, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule and being with us here tonight on our show. It's a pleasure having you on with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Kendra, if you would, please take us back to being a child and tell our listeners what growing up was like for you.
Well, growing up was pretty normal for me. I was a tomboy when I was a child and into my teenage years. So I grew up with a single mom, and she put me in pretty much every sport that you can imagine. And I just absolutely loved sports. I grew up in Canada, so I played a lot of hockey and, of course, enjoyed baseball in the summer and soccer. And it wasn't until shortly, after my teenage years that I entered into Kung Fu. But I always had that spark for, the physical aspect of our beings. And it wasn't until later on where I figured out the other half, which was the mental part. So it's been an interesting journey.
I got a question before I ask my next question. It's something that we've been working on, Dr. Davis and I. What was it like growing up with a single parent and not having, let's say, in this case, your dad in the picture?
Well, that's a great question. My dad was in the picture. My parents were divorced when I was probably about 4 years old.
Mhm.
And my dad would take us on the weekends. So it was always fun. We'd go to the water slides and, he just, excuse me, made the most of the weekends with us together. But so growing up with a single mom was such a blessing. And unfortunately, my mom recently passed away about a year and a half ago, and it was quite surprising and extremely sad. But it's made me now really appreciate what it was like because she had to work so hard to give us the lives that we had, which was, playing sports and working a couple of jobs just to, make ends meet and things like that. So it really has created a sense of empathy inside of me. Had I grown up, in this perfect life, which it was a perfect life
Right.
and whatnot, but in terms of having like two parents, um, she did a great job, and I don't think I would be the same person had that journey not happened for all of us, actually. And so it was really good. It taught me a lot about, the value of working hard, knowing how to appreciate the small things and the simple things in life. And now, as an adult, able to look back and truly appreciate all of her effort. And, I'm around, just thinking now at my age is, she had me around that time. And now thinking back to like, excuse me, I couldn't imagine raising three children and doing all that right now. I mean, I have a hard enough time just taking care of myself, right? Just with everyday stuff. So I look back and I think, wow, it was so selfless of her to just give everything to us children.
Now, what drew you first into martial arts?
Well, unfortunately, I was attacked in my younger years, and that's what triggered me to learn self-defense, of course, with the encouragement of other people around me. I found a Kung Fu school in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the Canadian Wing Chun Kung Fu Academy.
Mhm.
And that's when I started my Kung Fu journey. And at the time, it was to learn how to defend myself, but it turned into so much more.
Yeah.
Was it a
What was
mugging?
it?
If I could just say, was it a mugging attack or was it bullied
Basically,
or?
yeah, it was, excuse me, I got jumped by a
Mhm.
few people, and it was just a random attack. It was a mugging style attack.
Mhm.
And thankfully, I got out of it, and it wasn't, too extreme, let's just say, but it was enough to, traumatize me for a short period
Yeah.
of time, which, has extended into a less traumatizing experience. But of course, we're still affected by, the things that have happened to us, unfortunately. But yeah, it was quite shocking and upsetting at the time.
You don't forget it. You might file it away in the back of your head. Like I had mentioned to you, I grew up in New York City, the heart of Greenwich Village and stuff, and I was actually mugged twice at gunpoint.
Hmm.
Someone
Yeah.
sticking a gun right to my face.
Wow.
So I don't let it define who I am and stuff, but it's right here.
Oh, yeah.
It's still back there. You never forget that. And I think that's what makes me even today a lot more aware of my surroundings.
Mhm.
Matter of fact, my dad was a cop, but still, I was very careful still to this very day. I can't sit with my back to the door in a restaurant.
Mhm.
I know
Yeah.
I talked with Dr. Davis once. I mean, literally, if I go, my wife, she knows now. She doesn't even ask me anymore.
Mhm.
She just knows if we're going to sit in a booth or something or a table, what side of the table she's going to
It,
sit at.
I always use the example like if you see two police officers talking, they typically are faced like this,
Mhm.
where driver's side to driver's side facing opposite directions. And it's like, and the reason is because they now know of possibilities that we're not supposed to know about.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly.
So what was it like being a woman in such a male dominated space?
Well, it wasn't that big of a deal in my local school where I trained. It was, a very good balance. It was probably 70% men, 30% women, uh, young girls, older women, grandmas. So it was fine actually, and that was a really good experience for me. There was no, level of, who's stronger than who. Everybody was very welcoming, and I think
Yeah.
that type of school um, really brought in positive energy. So we were lucky that the positive energy came in. Any negativity that would come in, it was just automatically didn't really fit. So it would leave. And it wasn't until, the online world and, being more present as a female in the online world where it became a bit more of a challenge with, people that can hide behind their
Yeah.
keyboards and be anonymous and say whatever they want. So it wasn't until that pivot into the online world where gender suddenly became a bit of an issue. But
I mean, you probably still get that today. People look at, yeah, it's just, and I'm not saying that because there's no way. I've seen some of your videos. There's no way. I want to
She'll
be on
yeah,
break
the
you in
opposite
half,
end
man.
of your side, but, but, do you still find that today? Oh, it's a woman.
yeah, and it's not so much definitely still to this day. And I
Mhm.
think the online abuse and harassment more comes from, other people's insecurities with seeing a very good martial artist, and now this
Mhm.
very good martial artist happens to be a female. And so it can bring up a lot of um insecurity, anger, and all these things that get projected into words online. So ultimately, at the end of the day, what I've learned with my experience is that, as if you're succeeding and the higher you go and the more you're on your way to the top, there's going to be more people that don't like it. And you're going to have a bigger hater crew. And Eminem would always say, behind every successful person, there's a pack of haters. And
And
Jimi
he's right.
Hendrix went through the same adversity with being a phenomenal musician, and he had to basically end up saying, I'll let my music do my talking for me.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I do.
I'm trying to remember who the artist. I just read something the other day. Another famous artist had just said recently. They asked him why he didn't give interviews. And
Mhm.
he said, because I don't have anything to say. So my music says it all for me. And I thought that was fantastic because it's really true. I mean, I want to know more about the music than I want to know about the artist.
Yeah.
So can you share with our listeners? Because there was a moment where you almost quit.
Yes, of course. In my local training, there was a time where, I thought, wow, there's no way I can get to the next level because this is just so hard. So ultimately, you need to remove that from your mind. I think of it as like changing the lens. When you go to the eye doctor and they change all the
Right.
lenses. So, a lot of things are just a state of mind. So if you can just change that lens into I can do it, I will do it, I saw so and so do it, so it can't be that hard. And get your mind out of it, you definitely can. And then more recently, with online, challenges. Of course, there was times where I thought, well, I'm just not going to post anymore. I'm just not going to post my cool sword video because, reading the comments is, hard. And I just thought, you know what? Obviously, people are paying attention. The video is getting lots of views. The more people that type stuff, the more it feeds into the algorithm. Next thing you know, you
Yep.
got 50,000 views and maybe a bunch of nasty comments. But then I realized that I don't need to read the comments. And the comments are actually the jet fuel for visibility. And if you have a brand, visibility is, the biggest challenge for any brand. So fortunately for me, I don't have any problem with visibility because I've got a whole pack of people ready to comment and and bring me to life. So, and that's great because I've learned to appreciate the adversity. And I think to truly get to the next level in your business or as your brand, you need to, take the good with the bad, but measure it out and figure out the value. And if the benefit is high, then, you can tolerate the negative.
If someone is dealing with online bullying right now, like, what would be your suggestions for them?
Well, first of all, if it's targeted harassment, and let's say you're not trying to build a brand or get this jet fuel, block the person. There's no shame in blocking. Make sure you block all their profiles, and delete their comments, and then forget about it. You know what? Because other people are always going to have an opinion. They have, access now to write things out. But always remember that when people make comments or harassing online or bullying, it's more of a reflection of them, and something about you made them feel insecure and enough to have a reaction. So you can look at it as a compliment, but definitely block them and try to eliminate any type of negative attacks.
I know even doing the show for a long time, I was a paranormal investigator, and you would put something up and you had those people who did absolutely nothing else, that they were doing it for no other reason, and they got some kind of thrill out of it. Okay, just, that's BS, or that's
just trolling.
That, and even like with the show, every once in a while, I'll get posts someplace. Well, they don't really know what they're talking about. Well, that person is just this. I hear what you said, but I also think there's another group of people who just have nothing else better to do. And Dr. Davis could probably explain it a little better, where they feel important by commenting on stuff, and, well, not even commenting, but, trying to destroy. They want that interaction and that banter. Heck, even on Reddit, we post once a week. I post something on Reddit, and I had somebody say, "Well, how do we know you're not a bot?" That blew my mind. I was like, I've been called many things in my lives, but a bot wasn't one of them. Okay, I was like, what do you want me to do to show you I'm not a bot? Oh no, don't worry about it, because you'll just make something up. And it's like, it took me to 2 or 3 times to realize this is somebody who just wants to generate conversations and stuff, and I don't have time for that. That's really, really a waste of time. That's concerned. Dr. Davis, I'm sorry, I cut you off. You were about to ask the next question then.
Was there a defining moment when you decided, I'm going to push through this?
Yes, many, 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 which inspired me to write the book behind me here called Push Your Way. And yes, I've been stopped. I've had the stop signs up in front of me. I've had people tell me, you need to stop. And a lot of it is from my martial arts and building a Kung Fu empire and becoming, a leading brand in martial arts learning tools online. And there's a whole group of people who are traditionalists in Kung Fu that don't want this to be taught online, but I mean, it's taught online on pretty much every YouTube video you can find. However, I have learned to just, when they say stop, go even harder, go even faster, because there's something they don't want you to do, which is thrive and, become successful. And, another example of pushing your way through is dealing with, grief and depression and anxiety, and, trying to switch that lens from the darkness to, it's not so bad, actually. It's just all these things compounding inside my mind. So if you can learn to change that mindset and push your way through, as I like to say, so push past whatever is holding you back or pressing you down, your fears, your limitations, perceived limitations, then pushing your way through. I'm all about it. I have this saying that it's not over till it's over. And I get that from chess. I play chess. So it's also in the book, one of the concepts of, you can be just with a king and a pawn and, up against an entire army. All you need to do is get that little pawn to the end and become a queen, and you're back in the game. So it's strategically thinking and preparing your mindset for this, victory mentality.
And that's discipline we were talking about earlier, because that takes a lot of discipline to be able to do that. Now, if you would, okay, I'm going to go off a little bit of this here. Many of our listeners only know Kung Fu. When you say that to people, like I said that to someone the other day, they're like, "Oh, you mean like David Carradine?" From the TV show Hollywood. Bruce Lee is the other one that I get all the time when I talk about it, because people in their heads they think Kung Fu is exactly what they're watching on television. Now, I know that you studied, and what you're doing is different from the karate that most of these other people are doing it. Explain what you do compared to the other martial arts.
Okay, well, that's a great question. So I practice Kung Fu, and that is a Chinese martial art. And then within the Kung Fu, there's different styles. So I teach Wing Chun Kung Fu. And it's also the same style of Kung Fu that Bruce Lee learned from our mutual grandmaster, Ip Man. And more recently, the Ip Man Hollywood blockbusters have come out. So Ip Man 1 to 4, there's 4 of them. So that's made my particular style of Kung Fu more publicly known. And it's different than karate, and it's different than taekwondo. Those are more of competitive sports, competitive martial arts, where they compete. And Wing Chun is more of a street smart self-defense style. So using close range maneuvers to control someone coming at you. Now, it's not an aggressive form of martial art, but it would be considered very deadly, because some of the moves that we have been trained to do are poking eyes out and throat jabs and basically vital strikes. So it's not necessarily the type of martial art you would want in a competitive area, because some people might die, actually. So that's how it's different. It's real life, no fancy kicks, just I'm going to control you, I'm going to take you to the ground, and then I'm going to get out of the situation. So learning to dissolve a fight.
Because really, you said, you could kill somebody.
Yes.
Very easily with what you do. Yeah.
Are there some like core Kung Fu principles that apply directly to mental health? I'm sure there are, and you're the expert. So I guess what are they?
The core principles of Kung Fu for mental health is breathing. It's important to always be conscious of breath in, breath out. The flow of energy, the concept of, knowing how to read the room, knowing how to be discerning, The other aspects are stretching. Stretching helps promote the flow of energy. There's so many aspects. There is the commitment and discipline aspect that Kung Fu brings that is also good for self-development and healing, and creating this layer inside of yourself that is a pattern of commitment and a pattern of discipline. And those two go together very closely. And that really helps an individual thrive if they can commit to something, even be committed to uncommit to it. So to be like a fluid instrument of truth and balance and all these things that Kung Fu and martial arts brings out. And I would highly recommend anyone to start into martial arts. And Stephen, you had mentioned that you wished you would have done martial arts more.
Or as a child, yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. You can always start now. The past is gone. That's all gone. And we're here, we're now, and there's no better time than the present to learn about martial arts and to just begin just the simple basics. You don't even have to enroll in a martial arts class. You can just simply be, and that is a part of the martial art.
Yeah.
See, you mentioned the other part of that. You said discipline. How do you think that translates into, let's say, emotional stability?
It translates quite a bit. Knowing how to, in the heat of a moment, how to be disciplined enough to step away or take a time out, go into nature, being disciplined with how you react to situations. I mean, we live in a world where there's constant uncertainties. Everything's changing. The disappointments from our expectations add up and we lose control. So having the discipline to say, okay, that's the outer world. Now I'm in charge of my internal landscape. So this horrible things just happened. My heart is broken. I'm not talking about a death, but maybe a breakup or somebody that you care about says something to you that hurts. And you have to respect the world around you, but also manage your internal world. So how am I going to react to this? How am I going to let this dictate my day? Am I going to let it ruin my day? That's another day gone of being upset. No, it's time to say, okay, that's your view. That's whatever. But I'm going to take care of me and still spread the peace.
That emotional discipline actually has a lot to do with your physical health on top of that.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Definitely. Heart health. There's so many examples of how anxiety and heartache and pain and the suffering of the human can, affect the nervous system, the heart. And if we don't take steps to manage that, I mean, it might even be happening on a subconscious level that you're not even aware of, some sort of anxiety that you're not even aware of, but it can come out into physical health and physical health issues. So my recommendation is to find ways to find peace and to treat your body right and do positive things to make you feel good from the inside out.
What does push your way through look like in real life? Like, can you give us an example of what it will look like if someone's doing that?
Definitely. So to push your way through in real life, which is the book was written to translate the ancient principles of Kung Fu into real life. Now, one example would be being more assertive. So we kind of just walk through life, not really thinking for ourselves. And maybe that doesn't go for everybody, but oftentimes we're just kind of in a zone. We're following what I like to call the herd mentality.
Yeah.
And, it takes effort and intention, but when you can step outside of that herd mentality, the crowd is all going one way. We don't know where we're going, but we're in a line and we think that this is the line. And that's an example in the book where you find out, after you've been in this line for 2 hours, that it was the wrong line. It was supposed to be this line, and you would have been through by now had you been paying attention. That also goes for, standing at the light, waiting to cross the street, walking, and, everybody's kind of looking at their phone and in their own world. And one person starts to go out, and then you think, oh, it must be time to go out. And you just start walking. But meanwhile, it's still a green light, cars are going through, and that could have cost you your life. So a huge concept in the book to push your way through is to push yourself out of the herd mentality, start to think for yourself. And I believe that your life could be so much more, how do you say it? You can express yourself more when you're not stuck in the herd mentality.
Right. Yeah, you have to really see the world that's around you at all times. And we get, like you say, I'm in Florida, okay, which is even scarier when you're in a car and driving. But I watch how many people are texting still when they're driving. We're doing 70 miles an hour, 75, and you're passing the car next to you, and the person is like looking down, texting. And it's like, what are you doing? And I make sure I get like a lane away from them because I don't want to be anywhere near them, because at 1 second they look up and they have to stop because the car in front of them stopped. They're going to shoot into your lane. They're going to hit you. So I try to steer, really clear of that. And that's probably so important because, like you said, it brings you back to nature, brings you back to the world around you, and you connect with the world around you, and you can see so much more than, like you say, just following, like the little, I grew up in New York City in the rat race. Okay. You were just a little mouse walking around Grand Central with the other 2,000 people, running from train to subway and stuff. So yeah, I get that. Well, we're at that special time again that we talked about.
It's the lightning round.
Yes, it's the lightning round. Now, Dr. Davis and I will ask a total of 10 questions. Okay, we'll just have a little bit of fun with it, but it's very insightful. So if you could give us a word or two or a short sentence replied to each one. So the first one, discipline or motivation?
Discipline.
Mental strength or mental flexibility?
Mental flexibility.
Okay, your biggest misconception about martial arts? Or the biggest?
The biggest misconception?
Yeah.
Flying front kicks.
One word to you that defines resilience?
Another word that defines resilience?
Yeah.
Pushing through.
All right.
Hardest lesson that life has taught you? And of course, it can't be one word, but
Yeah. Life is valuable and time is the most precious thing we have.
There you go.
Morning routine or night routine?
Morning routine.
Okay.
Now, what keeps you going on your worst days?
Nutrient dense food.
All right. What advice would you give your younger self?
Don't sweat the small stuff.
There you go. Number 9, fear or failure? What teaches more?
Failure.
And one sentence to someone who feels like giving up.
It's not over till it's over.
Yep. And then I'd follow that with push your way through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that fits there. Now, I got a question because I fingered on for a brain to remember. You said something about nutrient-rich foods.
Nutrient-dense food.
Dense foods, yes. Explain that to our listeners, someone who's listening.
Yeah, so I believe the question was, what do you do when you're feeling, really down
Right.
or
On your worst days, right? What
Yeah.
keeps you
yeah.
going?
So, I mean, obviously a little bit of exercise, but for me, first and foremost is nutrient dense food. I feel like, by having a smoothie or, a couple of shots of carrot juice or doing something where I can feed my body nutrition is a great way to pull yourself out of a bad mood or a dark place. And there's really, I don't have scientific evidence of this obviously right here and right now, but there is something to doing something consciously positive, like an activity that's positive. It could be going for a walk or whatever, but to have something really healthy to eat, perhaps an apple, is your way of telling yourself that I care about you. I love you. I care about you. You're doing something positive. Now, these wonderful nutrient dense foods have nutrients and vitamins and all these wonderful things that feed the body. So that if you can feed the body things that make you feel good, excuse me, you will ultimately start to feel a little bit better. And I noticed that on a very energetic level that, by having a green smoothie or a salad or an apple is a very great way to begin the process to change your mood.
A lot of people, they, well, I'm just going to eat something and they, eat a burger or, eat a couple of slices of pizza and they actually feel worse
Mhm,
after
mhm,
eating that than they did before that. And they don't realize it's the garbage that they're eating, that
mhm,
we need to eat health. I mean, I've been watching videos all over YouTube about some of the food we buy in stores.
Oh man,
mhm,
Last night there was one about cheese. That
I don't even
everybody
want to
buys like
know.
American cheese slices. That's not even cheese. They don't call that cheese. They
mhm,
call it American slices. Kraft and some of the other ones. If you look at the label, it doesn't say American cheese. It says American slices because there's really no cheese in it. It's all
mhm.
chemicals and stuff made up. So yeah, some of that stuff is important. Now I know you
Can-
started
Go ahead.
before. You told us about really why you started writing the book, but push your way through.
Mhm.
Okay. Tell our listeners about the book, what they would find inside of there.
Well, the book, you find a lot of useful information. It's like a salt and pepper book. You can just kind of pick it up and open it, and there'll be some advice or wisdom that I've generated through my life that I've put into the book. So the book is a guide for modern day world situations such as grocery shopping or standing in line or taking ride shares, and I try to apply it to the modern world, including learning to say no, learning to say yes, figuring out what you want out of life. So it's to help you create the life that you want on your terms by using the wisdom of Kung Fu. So, Kung Fu and Wing Chun in particular is using the least amount of energy to get the maximum amount of results. So, the book has concepts to help you use the least amount of energy to have the highest amount of results. And the results are ultimately to have more time to do the things that you love in life, because as we talked about before, time in my opinion is the most valuable thing. So the book has been written by me to help you have more time to do all of that. And like you were mentioning in New York, the hustle and bustle, this book was inspired by an extended trip I took to Las Vegas. And during that time, I realized how the world is a circus. And if we're not paying attention, we can get sucked into
Oh yeah.
just these patterns and these, endless lines and things like that. So I was in a chaotic world and I was inspired to write the book.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Kung Fu Kendra, how people can contact you, and then I'm adding on to that. Um, unless I'm mistaken, you've trained with some really important people throughout your career.
Yes, I have. And I'm very honored. I've trained with tech executives, celebrities such as Brett Wilson from the TV show Dragon's Den. That's a Canadian and also a British television show. It's much like Shark Tank.
I was just going to say it's like Shark Tank for us here in the
Yeah.
States. Yep.
Yeah, and if your viewers want to look for me, they can go visit me at kungfukendra.com or simply Google Kung Fu Kendra, and there'll be a plethora of information.
And all of those links that we talk about and stuff are in the written description for people that are listening. So just go to the description of this and you'll find the links right there. So you don't need to get lost. I think even the link for your book is on there as well too. So there you go. Now I got three, well, not me, but we have three last questions for you. Okay. And I want to ask you, first one, how could someone build confidence when they feel, completely broken?
That's a great question. And the first step to developing confidence after feeling broken is to do something physical. So go for a walk in nature, connect with the birds, watch how the birds interact with each other, listen to the noises, and just be present. So that would be my ultimate advice for sure.
I tell people all the time here in Florida, especially, we have nature is all around us. And there's a number of state parks. And I had friends of mine that live here say, well, why do I want to go to the state park for?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because just find a spot somewhere that's quiet and secluded and just sit and open yourself up and listen to everything that's all around you. I mean, I have friends in California that go on hikes and they work every night after work. And they walk for like an hour, but they're walking through nature and they reconnect with nature and stuff. And I can just see how it affects their psyche and the way they present themselves and the way they deal with the world so much better than the stressed out world. I mean, I used to live in New York. So,
yeah, it's huge. And it can't be said enough that physical activity, especially things in nature, can help shift a mood, build confidence, and give you that distance from, your problems or your internal turmoil. And it just gives you a break, and that break helps you move forward.
What's one daily habit that someone who's watching can implement immediately?
One daily habit would be go for a walk. Go for a walk, go for a light jog. That's just one thing that can create such a positive part of your day.
See, so all you guys that are out there, when your wives tell you, "Go, why don't you go take a walk?" See, they're trying to help you. Okay, they're not trying to get rid of you. They're trying to help you on that. I'm sorry, that's where my brain went for instantly when you said that. But okay, the last question I have for you: for someone who's struggling right now, what's the best place for them to start right now if they wanted to?
If they're struggling right now, the best place to start is inside themselves. So close your eyes, lay down, and put your hands maybe on your heart, on your chest, and just nurture yourself. I am a huge believer in meditation audios, positive affirmations. So laying there with your eyes closed, your hands on your heart, and affirming to yourself, this might sound a little tacky, but I love myself. I love myself. And saying those words inside, it doesn't have to be out loud, but just affirming it inside your mind can give you a mental shift. You can change your mindset because now you are doing something good for yourself. So positive affirmations. If you're struggling in whatever way, just affirm to yourself, inside yourself, that it will be okay.
If you don't love yourself, you can't really love anything else around you. You have to start by being strong internally to be able to even just, I don't want to say deal with the world, but enjoy the world. You have to feel good about yourself. So, Kendra, your story of resilience is truly amazing. I mean, it really is. And I actually find it very inspiring. And I hope people
Me
out
too.
there who are struggling find it inspiring as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason we do these interviews,
Yeah, it
really
really
is
is.
to,
Yeah. So we truly wish you great luck, continued success, and implore more people to check out your programs,
yeah.
and begin the process of strengthening, let's say, not only their bodies, but with discipline with their minds as well. And I truly thank you for taking, like I said earlier, the time out of your schedule and joining us today on Your Life Matters Show podcast.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you both. Thank you.
So once again, we want to thank Kendra, Kung Fu Kendra Rae Mahon, for sharing her story with us tonight. It's truly an amazing journey, and it's a very good learning tool for many, many people. So I want to ask Dr. Davis two quick questions, and we'll wrap up today's episode. So what stands out to you the most about Kendra's approach to resilience?
Really, I like the accountability. I mean, honestly, like, in her story, she was like, and but she decided, you know what, I'm going to learn to defend myself. Hey, you know
Mm-hmm.
what, I'm going to go all the way with this. And I mean, I think that, she, even though, um, she was victimized, but she still took accountability for the aspects of that she could. And I mean, I think that's just such a powerful, amazing thing that people can do.
It's funny every time. Well, I didn't do it this week, but usually when we talk about the Way Post counseling sponsorship thing there, we talk about as like, you need to make that first step.
Yeah.
You need to make that first call. And it's basically the same thing here. You could talk about, oh, I got mugged or I got beat up or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to need to do something about that. Yeah, maybe I will take like, kung fu classes or self-defense classes and then never do anything about it.
Yeah. And
The
that's the thing.
first
She
step
she
is, yeah,
stepped up to the plate and I mean, legitimately did not just something, did everything she could about it, which is
yeah.
awesome.
And, and the first step is not saying, yeah, I need to do something about it. The first step is doing something about
Yeah.
it. It's great to
Absolutely.
put yourself in the mindset, but you actually have to do it.
Yeah.
And once you start, like she even said, there was a moment or two there where, she had self-doubts if she could continue or not,
Yeah.
but she did,
Yeah.
and look at where she's at today. I'm sure
She
she's happy.
pushed through it.
Right. Exactly. Yep. That's why I say that I really got to grab a copy of this book
Yeah. Me
because
too.
I didn't say that just for the interview. I have grabbed some books from some of our previous guests, and
Yeah.
because it interests me, I think it's a great philosophy. So I want to ask one final question. What does her story teach us about pushing through when life just feels overwhelming?
That if we can hang on, if we can just hang on for dear life and muster up that last little bit of strength, whatever that is, you know, basically her story is a shining example of, if we're overwhelmed, um, we can push through that. Like we can survive. We are resilient. We can make a difference, not
Hmm.
only in our own life, but the countless lives of others.
And it's not going to be easy to start
No.
off with. It's not. I mean, when you were saying that, I was thinking about, I'm not a gym person, as you can see, but the first time I actually went to was Anytime Fitness in Greensburg. And I remember the first full workout that I did with a trainer. I used to call him SS. Okay, Satan Spawn, because he used to, I
Sounds
swear
like
he
a
was
good
trying.
trainer.
Yes, he was trying to kill me. Okay, but he's still a very good friend to this very day. But I used to call him SS. Okay, Satan Spawn. But I remember one full workout, and we walked out of there, my wife and and I don't even know how I made it to the door because my legs were just like wobbly and stuff. I had pains in places I never knew I had pains.
Yeah.
And we went out to the car in the parking lot, and I remember it was like, heck, I'm not even that old now to get into a car that way. And I finally sat down into the seat, and she looked at me and she goes, "What?" And I was like, if I just cried here in the middle of the parking lot from all of the pain that I'm feeling right now.
Oh man.
And she said, welcome to the workout. She said, by the third or fourth time, like this, you're not going to feel that anymore.
Yeah.
And, pushing through, okay, that's really, for me, that's really what that is. I had to gather up all that internal strength and discipline to want to go back and see Satan again there and and go through another round of this. And I knew I had like 17 more of these things before he was even going to change our routine. 3 times a week I was going to be doing this for 6 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean, it was almost like
you have to try and just, it's like, I just have to get through it today.
And you know what? By the third or fourth time, I was walking out of there with my head held up. Okay, well, that was a little easier, and by the 6th or 7th time, it was like, that's it. So you have to find that internal strength. Nobody can find it for you. Yeah. You have to really reach down deep inside yourself. And I think that's what, the Kung Fu has taught Kendra, and it's taught so many people, is to find that discipline. Reach down deep and, like she said, put on those, like the eye doctor flicks those different vision things. Just look at stuff through a different lens.
Yeah.
And it's going to help. Folks, sometimes life doesn't give us a choice. We either stay down or we learn to rise.
Yeah. Kendra's story is a reminder that strength isn't something that we're born with. It's something we build through struggle, pain, and persistence.
So if you're going through something right now, keep going, keep pushing, because remember, your story isn't over yet.
Yeah. Please visit our website at yourlifematterspodcast.com for more information on our show. You can contact us there, learn more about the podcast, or even purchase some official merchandise and request to be a guest on the show. This is how we are presenting you Kendra this evening.
Now remember, if you've been bullied, feeling suicidal, or just need help with addiction, depression, or anxiety, any of these things, you can always just pick up your phone. It's cost free. Just dial or text 988, and you can do it in the U.S. and even like for Kendra's people in Canada. And there's somebody standing by, a professional, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The call's free, and that trained professional is waiting to help you.
Yeah. If this episode resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who may need it.
Life may be full of challenges, but your presence in that life makes a difference. Remember, folks, stay grounded, stay hopeful, and always remember, your life matters. God bless you, and we hope to see you again next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. If today's conversation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share the episode so more people can be part of these important conversations around mental health. And remember, your life matters. We hope to see you again next week.